Have you achieved success and a high income, but still lack personal fulfillment and work-life balance? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful But Struggling podcast. Join us as Erin, Eunicia, Joanne, and Mim share transformative insights and practical strategies just for you. Discover real stories and lessons that will elevate your personal satisfaction, professional accomplishment, and financial empowerment.
Welcome back. And as we get ready to launch into this final season of 2024, I'm going to be interviewing my co-host, Dr. Joanne Sotelo, about some ways we can begin looking at this end of the year, this end of the season, in a way that may not be that familiar as someone who practices medicine. I know before I became a coach, before I started working with other business people, I didn't really think of my year in quarters. And yet that's such a common business term. What are our quarterly goals? What are we managing to do this quarter? And so I love this topic that we're going to be talking about today, Joanne. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what ways have you found really helpful when you're looking at your breakdown of the year and your planning?
I want to laugh so badly because I remember it wasn't that long ago that I learned the concept of like quarters, really, because you're right. As physicians, I've never seen it as just show up to work. Like, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. And maybe because I was a leader, I would sit down in budget meetings and our years would go like July to July. So this concept of quarters is new. I remember I joined a mastermind some years ago and it was like that. It was called Q1 Mastermind and there was a Q2 and I was like, what do they with Q? And I think I was the only one who didn't think about it in terms of quarters. But how interesting, because that's exactly why we are here, because this is what I hear so much. And I've heard myself say that and listen and think if this is something that you have thought about. By the time of this recording, it's October. Usually at this time, our brain is already saying, it's almost the end of the year. The holidays are around the corner, whatever. And if your brain is a little bit on the negative side, especially about some things that you wanted to do, your brain, maybe not necessarily in a negative sense, but it'd be like, oh, it's okay. Let's just enjoy the rest of the year. We'll get back to our goals next year. Or worse, your brain might say, another year that you didn't reach your goals, you're a failure. And I say that from my heart. Just literally a couple of days ago in my group coaching, I brought this topic with the women physicians I coach. And I thought it would be just kind of like a good goal setting kind of call just to finish this year strong, just to get a little bit of a boost. And they all resonated so much with it. And they were also grateful because they all had that thought, unfortunately, of, I haven't done what I was supposed to do. I'm not doing well enough. Other people have it figured out and I don't. And we are here specifically for that, so that if those are some of the thoughts that you're having, let's reframe them. They are very appropriate. And there are still many weeks left of the year. And, when we think of this time frames, the end of the year, your birthday, New Year, these are times that our brain opens up to think of hope. That's why so many of us set New Year's goals with a different tone than in the rest of the year. But the truth is that we can reset and reframe and realign with our values and goals any time of the year. So I don't think I answered your question, Erin, but I went in one of my tangents. But it's kind of going back to, we don't always think about it in terms of a business. And what a good tone, because a lot of times if we think about it in terms of businesses, a lot of them have gigantic goals for the end of the year. That's when they do a bulk of their sales or they enroll people. And maybe we need to just inspire and use them as role models of what can we come up with for ourselves, for the people around us, for our family.
What I love how, even if we went on a tangent, you really brought up the importance of mindset. And when I heard you talk about, oh, I can just put off my goals until next year. Oh, I'm a failure because I didn't finish the goals that I set for this year. We know as coaches, as people who work with others, the power of our mindset is so critical, so important, maybe the most important aspect. And I would love to hear from your perspective, both as a coach and as a psychiatrist. How does that mindset shift drive our outcomes? Because I know for me as a physician, I didn't realize that for a good 20 plus years into my career until my mindset was challenged by an external party, which was my coach. And I would love to hear your perspective on that, because I don't think a lot of women physicians really understand how their mindset is driving outcomes, including those ones that they don't want.
Goodness, mindset is everything to me, because it is not always about the external circumstances, but rather what we're thinking about them, what we're making it mean, and what we want to make it mean. I always say when facing a situation, what's your desired outcome? How do you want to think about the situation? How do you want to feel about the situation? And kind of reverse engineer. And when we're talking about this example of the end of the year, that's exactly what we can do. It's partly getting enthusiastic about the year and hopeful about the end of the year, even when you're going through some struggles. And this is not to minimize that stressors are there. Again, this could be a very difficult time of the year for some people, so we never want to minimize that. But if we have our mindset, if we decide ahead of time what we would prefer the rest of the year to be, if we think of the ways that we want to show up, not just what we want to do, this is not just about goals, but how we want to show up, what's our presence, what's our energy, how are we thinking about things. It's particularly important, especially because not just necessarily work related, but maybe we'll be around family more so during the holidays. And it's important to also go revisit some of the things that you wanted to accomplish so that your brain doesn't take over in that mean voice of one more year that you said you were going to lose 10 pounds. And actually we're ahead of that, we're gaining. Or like, oh, this was the year that you were going to go to do that side project, or you wanted that promotion, or you're going to work on your relationships. That's what our brain will do without guidance. It's kind of like a mean middle schooler. And we have to reframe it and give it direction to the tone we want it to have.
I love that reframing. And the power is all on us to change that mindset. So critical. And so you talked about how our mindset, we bring intention, and about reverse engineering the outcomes that we want. So helpful. I'd like to hear from you, Joanne. Why is this particularly important for women physicians to pay attention when they're trying to finish this year strong?
We have talked in this podcast so much about the higher rates of depression, anxiety, and burnout in physicians in general. But as women, we have that added tone of guilt and perfectionism and sense of responsibility in the family, especially at this time of the year. And then also thinking about work, and if there are numbers that you need to achieve at a certain time of the year. And there are so many external pressures, but it's particularly important because of that, because the burnout rates are high. And again, not to sound here all dramatic, but a lot of people have extended vacation during the holidays, or and the kids are off. And I know from my experience as a psychiatrist, and because the rates of depression and anxiety, seasonal depression, all that gets higher at this time of the year. And people really like to come in for their visits. And I always try to actually not take that much time off during this time of the year so that I was available for my patients. And then at some point I was like, wait a minute, what about my family? And then I started protecting that. And, maybe I cannot take like the full 2 weeks that my kids are off, but protecting some of that time. So many of you do the same thing. And we don't always have the flexibility. So we might have the 25th of December off, but not the 24th. And then on top of that, we're thinking, oh my goodness, the kids are off of school. And even if you don't have kids, just all the family responsibilities. And then also, like we've said before, we are not taking that much time to take care of ourselves. And that can actually get worse this time of the year because the external pressures, the societal pressures, the family expectations can be higher.
One of the things you touched upon was that time off around the holidays. And we were chatting about this earlier. And what I recognize many times with, colleagues and the women I coach, that their time off is planned so last minute. And, or maybe they got time off they weren't expecting, or they knew it was there, but they kept putting off that planning. And as we talk about finishing the year strong, something I think would be helpful for people is encouraging you to look at what time do you have off? How long's it been since you've had that vacation? And could ending your year strong even include really planning intentionally the time you have off for the end of the year, or taking that time off if you haven't, and also looking to the next year so that you have something to look forward to and you're not leaving it to the last minute. I know my client, when we were talking about vacation, she was planning, it was 6 months in the making, which was not the norm. So not only did she have this amazing vacation, but she had the 6 months, which we know works positively in your favor, looking forward to time off, looking forward to vacations just as much as the vacation itself. So my suggestion is look forward and see what time should you be planning off to end this year strong, as well as maybe start your next year off with even more of a positive twist to it.
Yes, and I love that thought of it, and this is good. We've talked about transitions. This is good about transitions, and the end of the year and the beginning of the next one can be seen as a transition. And then is, how can I be my best this year so that I can start next year even better? And having questions like, how do I want to show up? What do I want my energy to be? How do I want to think about myself? How do I need to be thinking about myself to do the things that I want to do and to show up for those around me the way that I want, rather than it's almost done. Might as well start until wait until next year, and why not recharge the batteries if we can?
And that sounds like kind of easily falling into old habits, which is the norm. Our brains don't like change. That they try to save us by going back to comfortable habits, even if they're not serving us. So you started getting into this, Joanne, but I always want to know, what can we do about finishing the year strong?
So I'm going to share some of the things that we talked about during our coaching session this last week when we were talking about ways to finish this year strong. And the first one that we talked about, that is something that we don't do as well, especially as women physicians, is that we need to reflect on and celebrate the wins. Really, do this exercise. Sit down and write down all the great things that happened this year, big and small. And if your first thought is, I haven't really accomplished that much this year, acknowledge yourself with compassion, and then think again and say, well, is that true? I'm sure there's been a lot of good things, which is one of the beautiful things about group coaching, and especially because I know these women and that came up of, I really haven't done that much. And actually some of the other members of the group were able to say like, hey, don't you remember that in the summer you did this thing and you were able to step down from this position that you didn't want to do anymore, and you were able to set boundaries and you took care of your kid. So many things that we don't acknowledge because our brain is programmed as physicians to think that in order for us to celebrate, it needs to be something gigantic. And that's something that we miss out on. And going back to why is this particularly important for women in medicine, we need to celebrate our wins. I always say, pat yourself in the back. If you've worked with me, you've seen me. Like I literally pat myself in the back or high five yourself. And it sounds so cheesy, but we don't do it. It's harder than it sounds.
And I love that you're pointing out celebrating the wins, big and small. I witness so many women physicians. They're so accomplished. They're so good at problem solving. They don't even pause to celebrate the big wins. And I'm like, whoa, we're going to pause right here. Did you hear what you just said? Let's pay attention. And we're so used to just going immediately to the next thing and not having that transition to do the pause. And what if we could help women physicians make that their new norm, their new habit, that became the environment that we become used to celebrating wins, and we see that all around us. So much different of a culture than just hearing about fatigues and complaints, hearing about the wins and giving us momentum to go to the next challenge. So important.
Yes. And check in whenever you say, well, I just did blah, blah, blah. Try to eliminate that word just. We are so accomplished. There are so many things that we do, big and small. And then in that same line of thought, some of the other things that we did in our group call, which could be so beneficial for all of us, was talking about what sense of guilt do we need to release? What sense of shame do we need to release? How can we manage our time and our energy? So often we say, I don't have time for that. And we need to start eliminating that phrase and then saying, what am I prioritizing? What is important enough for me that I'm going to save time and energy? And we've talked about energy and mastering that full, like I say, capital E energy of the mental, emotional, and physical energy. These are all good things that it's not easy, but those are things that we need to take responsibility and accountability for. And then something particularly important for this time of the year is manage expectations. And I have to laugh because I say it and I have this memories in my head of if we're hosting Thanksgiving, it has to be this certain way and we have to have this many plates and this is so-and-so's favorite thing and then I have to do this other plate because it's so-and-so's favorite. And then, for Christmas, there needs to be this many gifts and I need to give, all these other things. And it's so much. And if that's super important to you, great. But check in and ask yourself, what's the drive behind me wanting to do all of this? And it's that where I want to put, again, my time and energy. So that is a good challenge that we all, and I raise my hand here too, of managing the expectations, the external, but more importantly, our own internal expectations.
And sometimes we put those expectations on ourselves without checking with, the rest of our family. And we may be doing something. I think of my parents' marriage, and I remember my mom making, green bean casserole or something for years. And then later found out my dad didn't like green bean casserole. So here she was putting this effort into doing something that wasn't serving either one of them because she had expectations. And she was meeting those expectations and they weren't serving anyone. And again, where you were talking about what are you prioritizing? And as perfectionists, can we let those that aren't in our top 3 priority, let them go? Or get curious. I wonder, as you're so fond of saying, I wonder what would happen if I only focused on these 3 top priorities.
And what makes you happy? Yeah, exactly. What do you enjoy? There is. I'll give you a funny tangent. There is an external expectation that I love giving, which is for my Puerto Ricans here, and if you don't know, I'll let you know. This is a super tangent, but I have to share. There is this Puerto Rican drink during the holidays called coquito, like small coconut. And it's the Puerto Rican version of eggnog, but it has nothing to do with eggnog. It's like a coconut with rum kind of sweet drink. So if you have a Puerto Rican in your life, ask them about coquito. And that is an external expectation that I love. Like my secretary said, when am I going to get my coquito? And it makes me happy putting in that time and effort to make that as a gift rather than, oh my goodness, this is so hard. So again, a little tangent of what you're saying, of asking ourselves what we want to do. And that's totally okay.
That mindset. I love that. So what I've heard you talking about today, as we really focus on finishing our year strong, the power of our mindset, even reverse engineering and being clear in what outcome we want to see, in knowing that there's higher rates of depression and burnout during what in the U.S. is a high holiday season. And can we be aware of that and really look at how we're managing that and trying to manage guilt and perfectionism? And then I also heard you say, can we use this as a time to reflect and celebrate our wins? So powerful. And then also releasing guilt and shame and managing expectations. And even with all of this powerful input about finishing the year strong, Joanne, is there something else that you would want our listener to think about?
Yes. And what comes to mind is I love the idea of setting a vision, right? I remember in your last retreat that we did vision boards, and you don't even have to do a vision board to sit down they're so powerful. I love it. To sit down and really envision, again, symbolically, we can think of the next year. If you listen to this episode before the end of this year, use it symbolically because there is an energy that goes behind it that can help you. And the truth is that we can do this at any time. We can sit down and ask ourselves what's important and visualize it. Visualize it. I'm having a hard time here with my English. Done. Like in the feeling that you will have afterwards, and use that energy to fuel you and stay positive, stay hopeful, stay moving forward. That's the energy I want to give you as you're listening to this episode at this time.
Love that. And with that, I'm going to ask you a question. If you've listened to our last couple episodes, you know that we said, hey, have you given us a rating or a review yet? And if not, would you mind taking a pause before we're done here and go to the show, scroll down past the first several episodes listed, and then you'll see leave a rating. And if you can do that for us, if you think our message is powerful and you want to share it with more people, that's one of the ways that you can help us get our message in front of more individuals that would benefit. And if you want to leave a review as well, but giving us at least that rating, you just click on the star, and that will help us get in front of more listeners like yourself. And with that, we hope to see you in our next episode. We'll see you there.
Don't miss out on more strategies that will elevate you to new heights. Visit successfulbutstruggling.com now, where you'll discover exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with each of us individually. There you can dive deeper into how you, too, can take your personal and professional game to the next level. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Number 1, connect with us on the website. And number 2, tune in to the next episode.
mindset is everything to me because it is not always about the external circumstances, but rather what we're thinking about them, what we're making it mean, and what we want to make it mean. If we decide ahead of time what we would prefer the rest of the year to be, if we think of the ways that we want to show up, not just what we want to do, this is not just about goals, but how we want to show up, what's our presence, what's our energy, how are we thinking about things. It's particularly important, especially because in not just necessarily work related, but maybe we'll be around family more so during the holidays.